Logs, metrics, traces, events, these are the core pillars of observability. But this data really only makes sense at scale if you also know how all of this data connects together. Meaning the logs that you get from the host, the metrics you get from a pod that runs on a namespace on that Kubernetes cluster that runs on that host. How is everything connected together? We call this the context, right? The dependencies. In Dynatrace, we have Smartscape. Smartscape is really the capability in Dynatrace that shows you all of the monitored entities from the host all the way up to your services, to your applications, all the way to your end users and business processes. So Smartscape is where we keep those entities, but also the connections and the relationships between them. Why is this important? Well, when we detect a problem, let's say your business process is impacted, you are not making as many sales as before, we then can go down automatically with I mean Dynatrace Intelligence can analyze all the dependencies, and it can then find the root cause in an underlying infrastructure issue, or maybe a wrong or bad deployment of a Kubernetes workload. Maybe somebody made a configuration mistake. So we can do this. We'll feed this data into Dynatrace Intelligence to detect problems and root cause. You can use this to explore your infrastructure, your complex infrastructure, and have an understanding of what you actually have and how everything is connected. You can also run your own analytics because Smartscape data is stored in Grail, and it can also be accessed through DQL, the Dynatrace query language, in any way you want. So what I want to show you today is the Smartscape app, which is a way to visualize all this data. All right, there will be more videos around how to use DQL for Smartscape, how you put it on your dashboards, your notebooks, in your workflows, in your automation by some of my colleagues, but today we're focusing on the Smartscape app. Now, let me switch over here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm here on the playground tenant, which I'm sure many of you are familiar. Everybody has access to the playground. You can simply also follow the link in the video. Now, I have already the Smartscape app open. The easiest way to find the Smartscape app, like with any app, I always say Control K, my magic 2 fingers, to open up the global search, and then you can search for Smartscape. All right, let's do this. Smartscape app. I'm already here. Otherwise, you will basically end up on the landing page of Smartscape. Smartscape app gives you different views, and the one that I just had open was the Explore Smartscape, and you can see now it's loading all of the different entities. Now, I have an environment here where I will be seeing all of the AWS instances, all of my hosts, my Kubernetes clusters, and everything. So you can see here, this is already, while it's not a huge environment, it already is quite impressive. You can obviously zoom in to see each individual entity. We have different Kubernetes pods here. You also obviously, if you have a very large environment, you can always filter. You can use your segments to filter on particular types of your applications, your services based on tags. You can also switch to a different timeline. Now, what I like about this, I want to show you just a couple of navigation skills. So for instance, we have the unguard MariaDB here. If you click on an entity, it automatically gives you an overview to say isolate. Isolation means now it only shows you the direct relationships of that particular entity to its entities it connects to. So MariaDB, I think this is the one, or the unguard is a Kubernetes stateful set. It runs a container, and that container runs MariaDB, and there's some other things like a Kubernetes pod. We have a namespace, and everything runs on this particular cluster. So this was the isolation. What I can also do is view topology. So if I say view topology on a cluster, now this can also be done on a host, this can be done on anything, but what I really like here with Kubernetes, I get to see a full overview of everything that happens in that cluster, all the relationships. So on the bottom, on the top left now, we have the cluster. We can see that the cluster has a couple of, or has one persistent volume claim. It has 17 namespaces. You can see here if we have more than, if we have a couple of the same entities, like in this case, 17 Kubernetes namespaces, we are grouping them together. So you can double click and then it opens up, right? So that's kind of the idea. You can always expand and collapse to make this a little bit easier. You can always also filter. Now, what else do we have here? If I click on, let's say, I think we already went with the isolation. Yeah, perfect. Isolation is already here. That's great. And we also did the topology. Now you can also always say open with, and then it opens this thing up with a different app. So this was kind of like the general overview. Now let me go into our landing zone here on the Smartscape app. we went to explore Smartscape. Everything is in there. Infrastructure. Let me show you infrastructure overview. If you are responsible for infrastructure, hosts, your cloud accounts, then this is a great way to get started. In this case, I can see here I have a couple of AWS hosts in different regions. I also have some in Azure, and then the same thing, double click to expand, right? So these are the different hosts. Another double click and expand. Now what you could also see, maybe it was a little bit too fast if I collapse this again, on a host, if you have a host, let me collapse this, if you have a host, we also show you a couple of key metrics that are important, like CPU, memory, availability for a host. That makes a lot of sense. We also give you a direct link to the hosts app. So if I click here, let's try this out, I directly get to the hosts app. So that means from Smartscape, you're not left in the void, but from there you can go directly, and then you get to the app that shows you all the the details that you need. Now let's go back to Smartscape, right? Back to where we were earlier. From an infrastructure perspective, let me do one more thing. I have this host here, and then if I click on it, let me do this here, click on it, same thing as before, view topology, right? If you click on view topology, something similar should happen. It tells me that on this particular host, we have 16 different containers and 25 different processes. It seems 7 run directly on that host, and the rest runs in containers, and I can again expand everything. Okay, now there's some different visualization options, horizontal, vertical, you get the idea, right? So this really shows the different dependencies, who calls whom, gives you the direct connection directions. All right, back to Smartscape. I want to quickly go over what else we have. We have a visualization for problems. So you know Dynatrace detects anomalies. This view allows you to show are there different problems and how are they connected with each other. In this case, on the playground, I have a lot of problems in isolation, but there are also some problems that are connected. There's 2 problems and they all seem to be connected to the same host. So this is something very interesting information to understand if you have cross dependencies, right? And obviously for problems from here, you could isolate the problem, you can explain the problem, and you can also look at the problem details if you're interested in this, right? So there's different things you can do with here. Now, going back to Smartscape, we have the service dependency graph. That's also really interesting. If you're a service owner, then you might be interested in saying, how are my services depending on each other? So if you're here on the service graph, right, it shows you all of the dependencies between your services. You can zoom in here, same thing. When you click on the service, we show you some of the key metrics like response time, throughput, failure rate, a direct link to the service in the services app to show more. Also, view topology, this should show me where does this application or this service actually run. So this service runs on this particular Kubernetes pods in this particular node, right? So I think you get the idea on how this is useful. Now, we have 2 or 3 more for the Kubernetes folks. On Kubernetes, we focus on the Kubernetes objects, whether it's the different namespaces on the different clusters. So earlier, I think we had the EKS. Now we are using this one here. Double click, everything is opened up, right? And the nice thing here is you also see if there's certain problems, certain components that have an issue, then it's also highlighted here in red. But the other thing, it's all the same. Click on it and then expand the group, view topology. So you basically walk the dependency tree and you can explore your environment. Now, last but not least, I think there's 2 more. For AWS, we have a pre-configured view that just focuses on the AWS components. For Azure and for GCP, these things are coming, but you get the idea. You can always double click to zoom in on the different entities, whether it's the NameODB nodes, like in this case, whether it's Lambda function or any of the other things, volumes, subnets, availability zones, all is here. And then you can always then view topology and see what is really running on there, right? So I just did a quick click on that particular availability zone and I immediately see what's running in that availability zone. Cool, so I hope you enjoy Smartscape. On the bottom, we have different use cases So Smartscape is not only there for the different views to show you the entities and how they're connected. There's also a couple of use cases that talk about, for instance, in this case, service topology. I think we had this already. So some pre-configured views. And what I really like, this is the one on the bottom. You will also see this embedded in the Problems app. In the Problems app, we basically use that visualization as a visual resolution path. So now this view just opens up, I think, the last problem that is open, and it gives you an overview of, from a problem, what application to which services are connected, where's the root cause component. This is the image provider. In this case, I can go directly to that service. I can isolate. But what I also see here, and let me just expand this, we also have a timeline view. Now let me move my image here a little bit to the top so that I'm not in the way, right? You also have the full timeline of your problem, all visualized and all interactive. Cool. So with this, let me go back to my overview. The Smartscape app really visualizes Smartscape data on Grail. We have different views that we provide out of the box for different use cases and for different personas. There is more coming, and the cool thing is all the data underneath is in Grail. That means you can also query it, you can put it on a dashboard, you can use it in an automation workflow, you can use it in an SLO, you can use it in a site reliability guardian. You can really now make queries that also connect different types of logs, metrics, and traces based on their dependencies. Right? So with this, remember, logs, metrics, traces, events is great, but at scale, you also need to understand the context, how everything relates to each other, and this is where Smartscape comes in. All the best. See you soon.